The game is No Man's Sky.
Hello Games, Sean Murray.
Universe is your sandbox. I'm here with Sean Murray.
Hey, Sean Murray of Hello Games.
And video game designer Sean Murray.
No Man's Sky.
Conversations online were seemingly split between two camps. One where gamers were awestruck at the near infinite size of the game's universe, and the other where gamers were confused as to what the objective or point of the game actually was. This didn't take Sean by surprise at all though. In fact, he was even urged and warned against showing the footage of the game, which was in such an early state as it would confuse gamers of what the point of the game actually was. But Sean felt this had to be done in this way, and in the process it would help gamers everywhere ponder the capabilities in a game with such a massive scope. He also wanted to shake up the sci-fi genre as a whole, as he felt it had been stagnant for quite a long time. In his own words, Sean said, "Games with a sci-fi setting have been terribly bleak for so long. Finally, this was a vision of hope, of optimism, of the science fiction of an era where space wasn't so uniformly depressing." The team was on cloud 9 with a huge reception from their showing at VGX, but this would be a bit short-lived, as just a couple weeks later,
Look at the damage. Just behind you can see the old riverbed for the River Mole, so the source of the problem. On the shed here,
they faced a terrible flooding incident which led to their entire office being severely damaged. This was due to a nearby river breaking through the banks, and this all led to them losing most of their office resources. Furniture, monitors, and PCs. Even their large water-cooled Mega PC got destroyed in the flood, which led to massive delays in production. In a time where people worldwide were awaiting future updates on the game as soon as possible, so this was a horrible time for something like this to happen, especially with Christmas the very next day. The flooding hurt the team in many ways. They lost many months worth of their work, and financially they lost many thousands of pounds. You'd think that insurance would be able to step in to alleviate some of the financial hit that they took, but this was not the case, as insurance would not cover such a location on the floodplain, and many people believed the rumor going around that they had help from their publisher, which was completely false. For Hello Games, this hit them directly. This couldn't have happened at a worse time for the team, and with so much loss so quickly, Sean even had thoughts of canceling the game in its entirety. One major thing to note about Sean Murray is that he lives and breathes to not only make this game fully come into realization, but to ensure that the dedicated fan base will be pleased and feel that their collective voices were heard during each step of development. It's what he wakes up thinking of every morning, and without a doubt, this is why he and the team were able to thankfully rally together during such a difficult and unforeseen time. There were sacrifices that needed to be made here and there, but they got right back to development early in 2014 after relocating to a different office in Guildford, England. Now, while they didn't receive assistance from a publisher or insurance, Sony themselves actually offered to help them financially, and Sean would accept their help, but not their offer, as Sean managed to negotiate a different kind of deal, one that would see Hello Games trading the financial help for a main stage appearance at E3 2014. Of course, this was an incredibly bold move, seeing that no indie studio had ever had a main showing at E3 before. Sean confidently and arrogantly told them, "We want to own E3." This apparently didn't go over super smoothly initially, as there was some logistical friction on their part, but Sony believed in the great possibilities of the game, enough to come to an agreement with tons of excitement for the future. In fact, Sony Vice President at the time, Adam Boyes, was even quoted as saying that the game would be potentially one of the biggest games in the history of our industry. So they were in some exciting but also dangerous waters, as Sony would expect big things delivered during and after the E3 conference. This was a pretty tall order for Hello Games, as they'd essentially have about 6 months to deliver an even more polished game for the live crowd and millions of online viewers. And that's not even mentioning the fact that Sean absolutely disliked interviews and stage talks. But this wasn't about him anymore. This was about the audience of gamers everywhere who, after having just a sample taste of No Man's Sky, were salivating and awaiting the game in their hands. This was about inspiring future generations of indie developers and studios to shoot for the kinds of games that they had grown up wanting instead of settling like so many. I'm sure 6 months flew by very quickly for the team. And it was time for the long-awaited moment for E3 viewers to watch and be amazed by the No Man's Sky presentation. Sean Murray, a clear introvert, had to shake off not only his dislike for public speaking, but also his own emotions that he felt almost overtake him on stage, as this was truly a dream project for him. Sean said, "By the time I walked out, I could have burst into tears, because what I was going to say was that this is basically the game I've always wanted to make."
Thank you. Feeling a lot of emotions right now. I'm Sean. I'm from Hello Games. We're a tiny little indie studio.
After Sean introduced himself to the masses, he then walked through the trailer, which showed a much lengthier version of what was initially shown at the VGX. He showed off the wild landscape, space travel, and full freedom that comes with the nature of the game. And what quickly became apparent to gamers and developers everywhere is that, unlike countless other games, no part of the immediate gameplay or background was a hoax. Places that the player can see far off in the cosmic distance was real and fully explorable and inhabitable. Each and every star is real, and every sun you see has its planets, all of which the player is free to land on. Sony was mostly pleased with both the showing and the reception that seemed to only increase massively. However, they did, like many gamers, have their concerns over the direction and scope of the game from a technical perspective. Sean would sit down for many interviews over the next 2 years, with one of the biggest highlights being The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, which captured an entirely new audience. With just about every article and video interview, gamers were holding on to every single word that Sean spoke, every promise that he made, and every headline written, for better and for worse. After about a little over a year of further development, the team made the announcement of an ambitious release date for the game for June 21st of 2016. This release date was decided on mostly to please the masses of fans who had high and positive hopes for the title. But once the eventual and inevitable game delays came, some of these same gamers turned pretty feisty towards the developers at Hello Games, as it would be pushed to August of that year. Unfortunately, this was also the start of the negative press articles that began painting Hello Games in a negative light. The thing about Hello Games then and now is that, regardless of the scope of the game that they are creating, they never felt nor saw themselves as being a AAA studio. In fact, during this time, they really only had about 10 team members on board for the project, as opposed to dozens or even hundreds from mid to large scale studios. I bring this up to frame the beginning of this next section and future areas of this story, so you can have more insight and understanding, as they had to deal with AAA game studio levels of challenges and negativity over some of the most meaningless things you can think of. Now, the volume of feedback and criticisms that they received is understandable, as they did take center stage at E3, which is to say that they took center stage in the entire gaming universe. Okay, now back to the game delays. The reason for them actually weren't all development related. You see, as I mentioned, they may be an indie studio, but because the industry held them so high, they had to deal with some legal issues. In the UK, broadcasting company Sky TV had allegations against the use of the word Sky in No Man's Sky. I'm not even kidding. And this isn't even the first time that Sky TV targeted gaming companies, as they previously won a case against Microsoft for the use of the word Sky in SkyDrive, which Microsoft were forced to change to OneDrive. Petty, I know, but this wasn't the only legal issue that the team had, and it did suck for them being such a small team, but yeah, this was what caused most of the delays. Thankfully, they weren't forced to change the name of the game. Navigating through both legal and development challenges was not easy for Hello Games, but they were finally able to finish the core game and announce that the game had gone gold on July 7th, 2016. For many studios, this would truly be an exciting time, but for Hello Games, this came with some unforeseen fires that they would have to address and put out quickly. Shortly after their gold status announcement, they found out that some retailers had decided to release the game early, otherwise known as breaking street date. On the surface, this may not seem like such a big issue. I mean, if the core game is finished, what's there to be fearful of, right? Well, two things. First, though, yes, the game is finished in the sense that all of the core elements are there and able to be played and enjoyed, but many of the elements in the game aren't 100% finely tuned to be played by the masses, or even individuals. The team had planned on working on tuning the game and squashing bugs that gamers wouldn't even experience when they got the game on the official release date. Secondly, I mean, you can already guess what happens when someone plays the game early and posts their negative experience on the internet. Countless gamers were awaiting this game and were desperate for any kind of reviews or first impressions. And so there was a Reddit user who reportedly bought his early copy of the game for over $1,200. And he took to Reddit to express his thoughts, claiming to have reached the center of the universe in as little as 30 hours, which goes against what Sean Murray had claimed in prior interviews, saying that it would take players between 40 and 100 hours to do so. This began the whole narrative around Sean Murray being a liar and the whole No Man's Lie title given to the game, even before the release date. Stories like this grew wings and spread online because, well, I mean, it's the internet, and as Sean himself notes,
For a variety of reasons, the press kind of operates downstream from the community. Because things are click-driven as to what stories you get served and things like that, we would find that glowing articles would disappear from the front page, but a rumor would surface from Reddit straight to the front page of every website.
Taking it back to his youth, Sean can even recall his experience being so sucked into reading gaming magazines and being led to think and believe what the media was saying about certain games and developers. So with the development of the internet, the power of writing can lead countless others into false and negative thinking. I bring this story up about Sean because it's a great lesson in general to understand that there are lots of gaming media outlets that will use false narratives to drive clicks and traffic to their site. And it's so important to do more digging on your own instead of taking headlines at face value, allowing them to guide your thinking. But back to the story. Only weeks after release, the team got tons of backlash from suggested promises that Sean had made, especially regarding the online components of the game, which were noticeably absent. Now, what I don't intend on doing is glossing over the clear mistakes that the studio made prior to release. I mean, yeah, the way certain features were communicated that were clearly far off in post-release development wasn't a great idea at all, as Sean himself noted by saying, "Yeah, we talked about the game too early. We were naively excited about the game, and we talked to other people who were naively excited about the game, and they interviewed us, and we all talked really excitedly, and I will not do that again." The thing is, Sean didn't mean to mislead or lie to anyone, and all of the features he talked about were continually worked on during and after release. But he did succumb to the spotlight and excitement surrounding the game and studio. Even so, no developer likes to disappoint their fans, and sending numerous hate mail, bomb, and death threats to developers is really not cool. And this led to them having to stay in close contact with the Scotland Yard, and these so-called fans took to picking apart every single thing this man said in public to point out what was not in the game. I'm talking the most simplest of things, like not having butterflies flying around in the game. Yeah, I'm not even kidding on that one. And the gaming media didn't help matters either, of course, as many articles were providing false stats and narratives around the drop-off rate of No Man's Sky, even though it was completely untrue and the game still had incredibly high player logins and regular gameplay times. So this is the part that few people know about when it comes to Sean Murray and Hello Games. We can remember the huge backlash immediately after release, but what was actually going on internally? Right now, you can imagine and understand at least a little bit of what they were having to sift through online, as fires were spreading pretty fast, as things on the internet typically do. Twitter became an absolute storm for the team to understand the real problems that gamers had with No Man's Sky and Hello Games. And this wasn't just about Sean Murray and his dream project. This was about the talented and passionate individuals to his left and right who worked with him daily and were clearly getting discouraged with the amount of negativity towards their creations. The last thing Sean wanted was for their legacy to be tarnished through the whole situation, as many gamers assume that developers are just lazy or don't care. And this team was anything but that, which is evident by the sheer magnitude of what they all accomplished and creating an entire universe. A feat that companies like EA, with over 300 employees, couldn't figure out. There was clear talent here, and this is what got him out of the bed each and every day to work towards an increasingly better experience for the players. As tempting as it was to provide answers to the masses online through an interview or even a developer vlog on YouTube, Sean reverted back to what helped him through high school and college when things got frustratingly difficult, putting his head down and working on video games. After all, Sean knew better than anyone that any words that he spoke would only lead to more trouble. But one thing you can't argue or debate with is delivering solid results. In order to deliver these results, Sean took it upon himself to do what he fittingly calls, and doesn't recommend, drinking from the fire hose. With what I can only imagine was thousands of emails that got sent to the team, Sean Murray decided to open every last one of them by himself and reading every last word. He did this to learn what the actual fans had to say about their game and how they could best serve the real fans. And what he and the team discovered was quite surprising and delightful. What they found is that on average, gamers logged on at least 25 hours of playtime, which is not only incredibly high, but it shows that, contrary to what YouTube videos and articles had to say about the game, there were many dedicated fans of the game that had some constructive feedback for the team to improve the game. So many of the fans were angry at the time, but not the kind of anger that you may think of. Most angry fans felt that this was the game that they had been waiting for so long, and it has so much potential that is hidden behind flawed gameplay features or lack of features that they felt was promised to them. And those are the kind of fans you can work with. The one bit of early feedback that he got constantly from these fans was the lack of an intuitive inventory system, which Sean was quite aware of and agreed with them. Feedback like this is part of what turned the No Man's Sky ship completely around, but instead of taking to a Twitter post or other outlet online, he and the team kept silent while they put their heads down and worked on each fix and feature one at a time. And only a few short months later, in November 2016, the team delivered a message to their audience in the form of their first major update, Foundations. This update was the first of many, and it not only addressed some core issues in the game, but also added things like base building and farming. And back into silence they went until the next update. This turned out to be an excellent strategy, as there's really only one thing that speaks louder than words, and that's actions. And every few months from 2016 until now, with no signs of slowing down, the team has been consistently delivering content that addresses what every player has been asking for. At the outset, the team actually didn't foresee the dozens and dozens of different kinds of playstyles that people would develop. I mean, sure, you expect some players would like to race to the center of the universe, and others that would take it slow, exploring each planet one at a time, but they were completely blown away by the creativity of others. For example, according to Sean, there are groups of players out there who only build restaurant chains on various planets. This was highly insightful for them, as they realized that initially, they were metaphorically painting broad brushstrokes for the game's audience, and realized they had to go back, using finer tipped brushes to suit the growing and different playstyles out there. Now it may sound like they're only doing what players want them to do, but truth be told, the team at Hello Games are what Sean Murray describes as mad scientists, and they're constantly looking for the next cool, what if we can do this or that moment, and not only throw it in the game, but sync each idea to fit naturally and seamlessly in the game. And player feedback only enhances what they already love doing. So I did find this pretty funny, but back when No Man's Sky was catching so much heat, one of the main reasons why was because of the lack of multiplayer in the game early on. Well, it turns out that actually wasn't as big of an issue as many people made it out to be, because when it did fully launch through the Atlas update, little to no one actually mentioned it online, which sucked because it was actually a ton of work for them. It was the rest of what they added that took the spotlight. Things like missions, galactic trading, and over 30 hours of story content. And what's amazing is that upon the launch of the update, they had over 1 million players joining in. With a game that has this kind of scope and support over the years, you know Hello Games had to win lots of gaming awards, which they did, but perhaps the best awards came in 2019 and 2020. At South by Southwest 2019, they received the award for the most evolved game, and in 2020,
Nominees are joining us here. Hi, guys. All right, here we go. And the winner is... The Game Award goes to No Man's Sky.
The 19th and most recent update last month in February added even more content to add ridiculously more hours to the game. But perhaps the biggest announcement they made recently, well, for Switch users like me anyway, is that the full No Man's Sky game will be making its way to the Nintendo Switch this year in August. With such a big impact that the game has made on not only the indie games industry, but the gaming industry as a whole, the obvious question that we all have to wonder is, what's next? Now, No Man's Sky actually wasn't the only game they've released since Joe Danger. In fact, they actually have had a few team members working on and releasing a title in 2020 called The Last Campfire, which was met with great reviews. This is an example of a side project that is very important for the creativity of the team. In a recent interview with IGN, Sean said, "As many updates as we've done since launch, and as many bucket list items we've checked off, our list of things we're excited about never seems to get any shorter. The team always comes out with new things that they want to do with the game, new content and features, and areas for improvement. I'm amazed that the energy levels are as high now as they've ever been. We tend not to talk about what's on that list publicly, but suffice to say, we're not done yet by a long shot." So one thing is for sure, and that is No Man's Sky will have tons of more content coming to it, which is only great news for the massive and growing fan base. And if there's one other thing we know, it's that their next title will bravely pave more pathways and move the industry forward in ways we've never seen before. Here are some words from Shahid Ahmad. "As far back as 2013, I was talking publicly about the necessity of games by independent developers that would blur the boundaries between traditional indie and traditional AAA. No Man's Sky did that, and more will follow. Creative risk is what moves a medium forward. No Man's Sky was a risky project to back. My ambition was always to see a game by an independent developer get the platform of a AAA. It looks like that happened. No one saw No Man's Sky coming, and who knows what the gaming industry would be like today if it weren't for their start in 2013, the year that changed what we all thought possible for any studio, AAA or indie."